Welcome to the latest episode of The Independent. I'm Pete Sampson, joined as always by my co-host Matt Fortuna. Matt, I am back at my dining room table based on the background. You are back at your home after a trip downstate for Illinois Penn State. I was much shorter drive up to campus for Notre Dame 41, Central Michigan 17. It was a game that had to be played because it was on the schedule. But really, it was Ohio State Eve on Saturday for Notre Dame. And I mean, they looked like it for bits and pieces of the game. It was as underwhelming as they've been all year, which is like, I don't mean that as like a dig at how they played because they've been really good all year. But this was a game where they were just pretty good. Sam Hartman was great. His deep ball accuracy is off the charts. I'm sure wherever Braden Lindsay was watching the game today, he was doing the Leonardo DiCaprio, pointing at the screen, like, yes, that's what I wanted to play in. He was phenomenal. Audric Estime was phenomenal. But there was a lot of things for Notre Dame to clean up because I think after we did the post-game show after NC State, and I think we were both sort of the mindset that, maybe Notre Dame's moving from could beat Ohio State to should beat Ohio State. And today I felt like it moved back towards could beat Ohio State from should. It was kind of one of those performances where, like, if they just replicated the whole thing next Saturday, I would not pick them to win. But that doesn't mean that they will because it's college football. Very little carries over from week to week.
Yeah, I mean, Marcus Freeman said it in the post-game sideline interview on Peacock, and he was asked it, so it's not like he volunteered it, but he said, it's officially Ohio State week. He said, we're going to celebrate this win because it was a good win against a good team. And I think my tenor has changed more so because Ohio State won 63-10 today over Western Kentucky.
Yeah.
And showed some strides of their offense that they hadn't shown yet, that you figure they probably had, but Kyle McCord, 19 of 23, 318 yards, 3 touchdowns. Marvin Harrison Jr., 5 catches, 126 yards, 1 touchdown. Notre Dame, they didn't play great, but they didn't play bad. I mean, anytime you put up 578 yards of offense and don't turn the ball over, it's not a bad performance.
No.
You wrote it, and I agree with you. Audric is phenomenal. Just a joy to watch play football. He can beat you a number of different ways. Seeing him hurdle some guys at the end and route to a long run was fun and impressive.
No hot dogs today. He said he had lasagna.
They even the broadcast was talking about the hot dogs. That's a narrative that just won't die. You have a quote unquote 500 monster at tailback, to use Dylan McCullough's words, not mine, but you do have a lot of talent in that backfield, so that you don't have to give your A-lister 20 carries in a game against an overwhelmed MAC opponent. Again, will that hurt you next week? No. Might it hurt you against USC for a month from now? We'll see. So they probably had to work a little bit harder for this one than they would have liked. Going into halftime up a single possession, again, not that encouraging. Seeing Bert Emanuel Jr., who's not a bad player, the quarterback for Central Michigan, gets scratched or officially announces out, before kickoff. You're expecting a better performance defensively from Notre Dame than what they gave you. And again, no forced turnovers. That was the one thing I think I want to see or had to see in order to definitively say all right, these guys are taking strides. Did not see that from them today. It wasn't a bad performance, but Central Michigan more than held their own, 41-17, the final. They covered the spread. They hung around, was it 31-17 going into the fourth quarter, I think. I mean, another game where you can only get Steve Angeli in at the very, very end. And I know that's not the worst thing in the world, but, we preview this game. Other people preview this game. And again, it's the Ohio State warm-up. You want to be done with this as quickly and as efficiently as possible so that you can get extra work for all the people who will not get that work, barring disaster next week against Ohio State. So, a bit of a mixed bag performance. Again, nothing bad about it, but, it's over with. No one's got hurt. They'll be unavailable for next week. Ohio State looked a little bit more like Ohio State this week, today. And, it's game week. It's Ohio State game week. I'm pumped. I mean, look, first time in Notre Dame history, 5 straight games, staying back to last year with 40 or more points. That's not nothing either.
No,
that's the formula for beating a team like the Buckeyes, who like to get in a track meet.
Yeah, Notre Dame will have to score at a very high rate next week because I think that the defense will be pushed. In terms of the things they have to clean up, tackling they have to clean up, penalties they have to clean up. They had 2 sort of roughing the passer penalties on Mills and Burnham. Jade Mickey had a PI. Holden Stays had a hold that took a 72-yard touchdown off the board. It was not a clean performance, really. And for the second straight week with the penalties, are we nitpicking? Yeah, for sure. But I think that's okay to nitpick if your goal is to beat Ohio State, like the standard of like, what will this performance translate to Ohio State or not? I think it's okay to view Notre Dame that way. I think the program should take that as a compliment that people sort of would nitpick the way that they are right now. But it's like, if you have Hartman and you have Estime, and I think the offensive line as a run blocking unit is quite good right now. Pass pro, I have some concerns. And it's like you talked, and I wrote about this and you mentioned it, like, ideally, do you want Audric Estime to carry 20 times against Central Michigan? Not really. Because there's a cumulative effect of that kind of workload. But, the bigger one is like, do you want Sam Hartman in there in the fourth quarter when Rocco Spindler sort of gets bulldozed and then his knee gets taken out and he's on the ground for a hot second and then hops up and walks off? Like, having the season flash before your eyes in the fourth quarter of Central Michigan, that was something to be avoided today, and Notre Dame didn't avoid it. So that, I think that's something where, is it being hypercritical to point that out? I don't think so, because if Hartman didn't get up, we would all be having kittens right now about it. So that's, to me, that was significant. They just didn't put away an opponent that they probably should have or could have in the way that they did Navy or Tennessee State, or frankly, even NC State in the fourth quarter, the way they put them away. So that sort of left you wanting a little bit more today.
Especially with the way this one started, that Tobias Merriweather 75-yard touchdown. I mean, I could have thrown that to you, Pete. Like, it was so easy.
You could throw a ball that far?
Here we go. Was it that far of a throw?
I think it was about 45
Let's
yards.
try it. I'll pick it up. And
okay.
It was, it looked like it was going to be a cakewalk. It wasn't a cakewalk. I mean, again, the final score is never exactly in doubt. Credit Jim McElwain, when you coach in the SEC, that's going to be the first line of your coaching obituary, good or bad. It's easy to forget this guy was the OC on a Nick Saban national title team in 2011. And as I was reminded by the broadcast today, 2019 MAC Coach of the Year. Like, they're not a bad MAC program, Central Michigan. He's done some good things there. Obviously was overmatched today, and I thought did the best he could with the card he was dealt pregame with no Bert Emanuel Jr., who, by the way, I don't know how we didn't get to this. Probably because of Central Michigan, we're not talking about Ohio State, but
that's why
Bert Emanuel Jr., the son of Bert Emanuel, who was famous for that
the rule change.
I think it was. Yeah. You'd be surprised. There's a Horn on Colorado who's a receiver, and I'm like, that's got to be Joe Horn's kid, right? Like, and it's not
JC Horn right now. Related.
Yeah. So there are. That was interesting. Game day, by the way, is coming next week. They finally announced that officially. I think we all kind of saw that coming. Just one more layer of excitement to add to 2 of the biggest brands in college football getting together while they're undefeated. I will say it'll be hard to top I didn't realize until last night WWE SmackDown was literally in Denver. So you get John Cena trolling Jay Norvell on Friday, and you get The Rock guest picking with Lee Corso on Saturday. I don't know who's going to stop over South Bend next week. I mean, there's probably no shortage of guys who would be great guest pickers, but when was the last time game day was there? Was it 18 Michigan, the opener?
I think number 12 was Stanford
and
time. Yeah.
Vince Young was Vince Vaughn. Vince
yeah.
Young. Vince Vaughn was 2012. Who was the guest picker in 2018? I also don't remember.
I don't remember. I mean, it's the 30th anniversary of Rudy, so maybe you could get Sean Astin to do it.
Better him than the real
Rudy himself.
Rudy,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it's gonna be a scene. It's the game that we wanted to see since I don't know, January 5th. Like, you wanted to see undefeated Notre Dame versus undefeated Ohio State. Now we get it. It's the kind of game that you get. I realize they played Clemson top 5 last year and won, but like Notre Dame was down relative to where they are now. 2020 Clemson, that was number 1 Clemson, but with his backup quarterback during COVID. So you're not getting like the full thing with Clemson being here. Now you get the full thing. Like, I think I was on, I don't know if it was a radio show or a chat where somebody's asking me like, okay, what this is going to be, this has a chance to be the biggest home game since what? And I don't think that I could get to a point that I would put it over the Bush push game. If we're having that conversation next Sunday morning at 1:30 a.m., we just saw some stuff, man. Like, yes. That would be incredible. So I don't think we're going to get there, but 2012 Stanford, the Clemson games, it's got a chance to go above all those. Got a chance.
It's interesting because you rarely get one of these so early in the season, right? Like, the winner of this game is going to feel so good about themselves moving forward, despite the fact that both have several large challenges, in October and November as well. The Stanford game was interesting because no one, even the most diehard among Notre Dame, saw 2012 going the way it did. But playing a Stanford team that really had become not necessarily thorn Notre Dame's side, but like you could still win this way, guys. We're doing it. Like, look at us. And by the way, we're doing it by out-rushing you by 100 yards or more every time we play you. Beating Stanford with game day there and doing it the way they did, like the symbolism of a goal line stand in overtime in the rain with a backup quarterback, like that's an iconic moment that, like, I just remember being on the sideline soaking wet. You just, like, that was like a scene to win that way. Like, but the pregame hype was not what it was or what it will be for this game. The Clemson game last year, great moment, great validation for Marcus Freeman. Notre Dame wasn't really playing for much at that point. It was like, all right, hey, this guy might know what he's doing. Let's give him a chance here. 2020 was cool. Again, no Trevor Lawrence, but number one, you beat him at home. I know the crowd, was what it was because of COVID, but that was a signature win and moment for Brian Kelly. And unfortunately for everyone, him and everyone around Notre Dame at that point, the reality of the situation was what it was, and there are only 30,000 people in the stands that night. You have a chance for something different here. I almost like 2017 Georgia is what comes to mind, just because of like the fan invasion, and you're gonna see how for real you really are against a team that you think is going to be among the best in the country.
That was 2 games after 2016, right?
Right. Well, and Georgia was 8-5 the year before. No one knew Georgia would, like, you figured they'd eventually figure it out, but you didn't think they'd be that good that year.
No.
That's Jake Fromm's second career game, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, because Jacob Eason got hurt in their opener, against somebody. But one of the things that I think gets lost in like the comparisons of like Clemson or Georgia or Stanford is like the animosity for the opponent for this one is much, much different than those games. Like, I'm not saying that Notre Dame was, well, yeah, I would say like Notre Dame was fairly friendly to Georgia, and I think they were fairly friendly to Clemson. Like, Notre Dame fans hate Ohio State, and I think Ohio State fans hate Notre Dame. Like, it's a rivalry that doesn't get played a whole lot. And like, Notre Dame has not beaten Ohio State since 1934, I think. Like, they've lost 5 in a row. It's the longest active losing streak they have against any program. Like, there's the Marcus Freeman element, the
Gene Smith element. I mean, Gene Smith was a player and coach at Notre Dame. The green jerseys, we haven't seen them do green jerseys for like a marquee game since USC, I think.
100%. You got that happening.
And good, by the way, very nice green jerseys. The other ones are, I could do without. These ones are like, oh yeah, I would buy one of those.
Yeah, the potential of the Ohio State fan base being in the stadium, like what that looks like. There's just so much more like with this one that gets you hyped up for it. If you even have a passing interest in college football, like, you'd be excited for this game. Never mind the people that listen to this podcast. So it's it's going to be a crazy week. We'll have 2 podcasts midweek, ideally, plus the post game. Our producer would behoove us to ask that if you get this podcast on Apple or Spotify to rate and review the show 5 stars, or you can check us out on YouTube as well. Subscribe if you're there.
Our producer was also at the same game I was at today. Hopefully he had an easier time with traffic getting back than I did from Champaign to Chicago. But no, I saw the commissioner was there, Tony Petiti. There was a large Big Ten contingent because it was a Big Ten game, but they're all going to be in South Bend next week because it's Ohio State, Notre Dame. I mean, and look, next week's schedule is insane. Like, it would have been nice if one of those big games next week was this week, just because this was a no games featuring 2 ranked teams week. But next week you've got Clemson, Florida State. You've got Oregon State, Washington State, which is a really interesting game now, just due to the fact that there are only 2 Pac-12 teams remaining. You've got Oregon against Colorado. You've got UCLA, Utah. You've got this one. I think you've got Alabama, Ole Miss, which, by the way, if it involves South Florida and lightning delays and Tommy Rees and backup quarterbacks, stay away. That's all I'll say.
Just keep your distance. So bad.
I had that one on my phone driving back to Chicago, and it was like, man, if South Florida just had any, I guess you could say the same about Alabama, but any quarterback play whatsoever, they could win this game. Like any throw to the pass, and Alabama eventually wore them out. But yeah, that was something. Tyler Buckner wears number 8, by the way. I was unaware of that till today.
He does. Yeah, it was, as we record this at 10 p.m. Eastern on Saturday night. It's been a rough day for former Notre Dame quarterbacks. Tyler Buckner went 5 of 14 for 34 yards.
Pine starting tonight.
Phil Jacoba currently is 3 of 8 for 33 yards.
I'm looking at them right now on TV.
Their stat lines read like date lines from a history unit on the Great Depression. Like it's not going well. Drew Pine tonight. I'm not sure if I don't know if I'm going to stay up for this one.
I might. We'll see. I had an early wake up call this morning, but Pine was in position to win that starting job till he pulled his hamstring in camp, and Jaden Rashada kind of won it by default. Arizona State has not looked like a good team at all so far. They're home underdogs to what I think is a pretty damn good Fresno State team. That'll be an interesting one. I don't know where I'll find it. I assume it's on the Pac-12 network if it involves a minor Pac-12 team and
I'm out on that one.
Group of 5 opponent. Well, I was talking to someone who used to work at UCLA today who's like, UCLA today had what did they have? They had an HBCU, and much like Notre Dame, it was the first time they ever played an FCS team, and it was a big deal for their athletic director Martin Jarman to get this done. And I was talking to a former UCLA employee who was at the Penn State Illinois game today, and he was very excited about it. But he's like, it's not even on Pac-12 Network; it's on like Pac-12 Plus, available only in LA. Like we couldn't even watch it if we tried to here. And meanwhile, I go to the Penn State post-game press conference, and Corey Geiger, my old boss from the Altoona Mirror way back when, is in the back of the James Franklin press conference live streaming his 11-year-old's Little League game in Altoona, Pennsylvania. And I said, Corey, it's easier for us to watch your 11-year-old's Little League game than it is to watch UCLA football and most Pac-12 football these days. That says something about why the Pac-12, as we know it, will not exist beyond this year. But it's just Notre Dame exists, Ohio State exists. It's going to be I don't know if you saw, like they have that NBC Big Ten primetime like theme commercial, and they've been running that in advance of next week, which we assumed would be their A team and the pregame show and halftime show and all that.
Todd Blackledge has confirmed as much publicly that he'll be calling the game. So
awesome.
And it's just like, we talk about these quarterback play elsewhere, whether it be Pine or Buckner or Jakovic, and then you look at Hartman, 16 of 26 for 330 yards and 3 touchdowns.
And it just felt like another day at the office.
So easy for him. And he left a lot of yards out there, which is crazy to think about, because I don't know if this comes through on the Peacock broadcast, but when you're up in the press box watching the game come together, there are so many singles and doubles that he's turning down, trying to hit triples and home runs, and he hits a lot of triples and home runs. But that's something next week I'll be curious to see if he gets a little bit more conservative about taking what's available to him opposed to pushing the ball vertically. Because there was a lot that was available to him over the middle, crossers, things, routes that are more intermediate to short. But today he played very much a deep to short game. Looked great. I mean, when the ball comes out of his hand on a deep shot, like, I think that it's probably been, if you just put together the throw to Merriweather, the throw to Tyree, and the throw to Flores, which went for 34 yards, I don't think I've seen 3 better throws from a Notre Dame quarterback combined in a few years. Jack Cohn could, put it up there, but the way that Hartman just throws people open, I think it's not just unique at Notre Dame. I think it's unique in college football, or it's something you see elsewhere in college football. Like the ability to let people run under the ball and lead them into open space. Like they had 163 yards after catch today. And I wrote about this during the week. Like they're, I believe, still on pace to, Pro Football Focus only keeps yards after catch for the previous 9 seasons, but they're on pace to just crush the previous high. I think in those previous 9 seasons, they've averaged about 1,500 yards after catch per season, and they're on pace for about 2,000 right now. I'm not saying that Hartman is going to keep this up when the opponent difficulty increases, but man, the way that he sees the field and can get people open and like make Notre Dame's receivers look like they can go out and beat you one-on-one is very, very impressive to me.
It's interesting, especially when you look back at the box score from today and we watch that game and we think it's not coming as easy as it should. And then you see Merriweather 75-yard touchdown catch, Chris Tyree 76-yard touchdown catch, a couple other big plays. And frankly, it reminds me of those classic Ohio State teams. Like even last year's Ohio State team, how many times did you watch them play and think, man, they're struggling here against a team they should be killing? Oh, there's a 48-yard touch. Like I think of last year at Penn State, I think they put up like 28 points in the fourth quarter on big plays when they were down all game. 2 years ago, I remember covering a game against that they played at Minnesota. It was tied late. They ended up winning by like 14, and you look and they had, I think, 5 touchdowns of 50 or more yards. Like it's, I wouldn't say Notre Dame's offense is boom or bust by any stretch of the imagination, but they've shown enough boom that no matter how bad it's looked, and again, it hasn't looked that bad so far. The competition hasn't made it that bad so far, but it gives you the confidence that, the first 3 and out of the game doesn't mean this is going to be a long day. And I think you feel that way even if you struggle for a half against Ohio State offensively next week. You've got a veteran back there. You've got receivers who are in sync with him and are set on making plays. Again, it's unlike anything I can remember covering. You had Brady Quinn, and I know there was a lot of that, or some of that at least.
That was, there was some of that. It was just, I asked Audric Estime about this after the game today, because it's the first time I can remember in a long time, maybe back to Quinn, where Notre Dame could pass to set up the run. Like for the longest time, you would have to hammer Audric Estime over and over and over and over again, and then something would break down the field. Now it's like, no, just go out and rip it down the field. Tyree, Merriweather, Flores, Jaden Thomas had a nice catch. And then it opens the door for Audric Estime to bludgeon you to death because you actually have to respect the pass. And it reminds me of talking to Jared Parker. I think it was the Tuesday after Navy. And essentially I asked him, it's sort of like a spinoff, like the old Mike Leach quote about like what's balance and offense. Like if you can throw it 90% of the time and run it 10% of the time, but they can't stop either, like that's balance. And I feel like Notre Dame's kind of that way right now. And Parker was like, yeah, if you balance, to me, this is Parker talking, is not 50% run, 50% pass. It's being able to do both efficiently when you want to do it. And as much as Notre Dame has talked about, hey, we want an offense that can run when we want to run and throw when we want to throw, I'm not sure they always could do that. And this year's team feels like they can. Hartman is the biggest reason why. Like, hell, I'm trying to think who said this post game. Like, it may have been Riley. No, Estime maybe said Notre Dame has the best quarterback in the country. And Tobias Merriweather talked about how they have an NFL quarterback now. And let me see if I can find the quote, because I thought it was very telling to me about like, oh, okay, this is just a different reality that they're living in. I'll find the quote just about how like they have a quarterback who not only can throw you open, but it's like I think the way he phrased it was he sort of makes it hard for you not to catch the ball, which I don't think anybody felt that way before with, I mean, even Ian Book or Jack Cohn, who did a nice job. Yeah, this is the quote from Tobias Merriweather. The question was, Sam Hartman connected on a few deep balls today. What is he able to do with a deep ball placement that makes things easy for you as receivers? And the answer was, yeah, he's an NFL guy. The difference between college and NFL, the quarterbacks just don't give the receivers any choice but to catch it. They throw it on you, and it's going to be there, and you expect it to be there. And I think that's what Sam does for us. And he's just let us make plays, puts the ball in our hands, and lets us go do what we do. And, they're just like, would it be great if Notre Dame's receivers could catch more 50-50 balls? Yeah, but Sam Hartman sort of like throws you into 90-10s just based on the way he can place the ball over the middle or deep down the sideline. Matt, what have you always said is my biggest weakness on fall Saturdays?
Well, Pete, I'd say your hair, but who am I to talk? Let's go with your wardrobe.
Harsh but fair.
As a friend and your co-host, let me tell you about the exclusive clothier of Notre Dame football, ESQ. ESQ outfits over 400 professional athletes, celebrities, and Irish players on game day, with bespoke clothing that elevates their game off the field. ESQ sculpts every garment with precision, helping you look your best for work, weddings, celebrations, or in your case, Pete, the press box.
Listeners of The Independent can get 15% off their first online order by using the code IND15 at checkout. That's IND15, or visit them at their Chicago showroom for a full custom look. Head to esqclothing.com to create your perfect fit.
It'll be interesting next week because you look at the final score of Ohio State's game, 63 points. You see the stats offensively, and you think, all right, Ohio State's back. And again, I did not watch that game, so I don't want to say this as gospel, but just scouring the box score. Austin Reed, the Western Kentucky quarterback, was 21 of 37 for 207 yards, one touchdown, one pick. He averaged 5.6 yards per completion. They scored 10 points. They turned the ball over 3 times. Say what you want about the level of competition, but when you talk about the 90-10 balance, Western Kentucky historically is that team.
Yeah.
Austin Reed threw for almost 5,000 yards last year. To hold him to just 200 and to hold his team to just 10 in a very easy look-ahead spot for Ohio State with Notre Dame on deck next week, that is encouraging for Ohio State. And I'm not saying it's discouraging for Notre Dame, but again, in some ways, I think this week was the best thing that could have happened to Notre Dame. Like they play not crisp enough where they can, they have a lot of coaching points to get to. And Ohio State looks like the Ohio State of old, where there's no chance whatsoever of you know what? Hey, they ain't themselves anymore. You'll have the confidence you can go in and win, and maybe should win if you're Notre Dame. But you're not that you're ever in position to overlook an Ohio State or take an Ohio State for granted. But I think this was the perfect kind of end result for both teams to go into next week and give it the hype and attention it deserves.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really look at it that way as I was writing tonight, but and again, your point's well taken. Like, you're not going to overlook Ohio State. Like, that would be insane. But and I don't think Notre Dame comes out better for the experience today based on it was great that we committed these penalties and the quarterback almost got hurt. Like, that's not what I'm saying. Nor do I think it's great that they had to play without J.D. Bertrand and Mitchell Evans and G.J. Brown and Gabe Rubio, who I believe all will be back next week.
Bertrand's the one, by the way. I know.
That was
noticeable.
Yeah, and it's not a Jack Kaiser issue filling in for him, because he led the team with 10 tackles and had a sack and a forced fumble. But it's more like the knock-on effect of when you take Jack Kaiser out of the rover position and put in Jalen Sneed, you have a big drop off. When you put Jack Kaiser in over JD Bertrand, you have a little bit of a drop off there. So you're hurting two positions. They can't afford that next week. Like Mitchell Evans, does he hold on Audric Estime's 72-yard touchdown run that gets called back because he's a much better run blocker? Probably not. DJ Brown, does he miss a tackle on the first drive around the goal line? Probably not. Gabe Rubio, does he get gashed up the middle a little bit? Like, maybe Donovan Heinisch did some. Probably not. And that's like, it's all fair because you want to take your best shot at Ohio State, which means you want to have your roster completely ready to go. And, right now they're not there. But the way that Marcus Freeman described it, Mitchell Evans, you had a concussion during the week. My intel said that he did not practice at all on Thursday. So that probably happened Tuesday. Maybe you could be back for Ohio State. Bertrand, I was told, could have played today potentially, but the bigger point there is he will play against Ohio State. DJ Brown, the way that Freeman described it, made it sound like it was a little bit of a game time decision or something that they thought about in the last couple of days. I don't know if I'm portraying that accurately, but that would give me at least some confidence that he would be back. And then Rubio was supposed to miss 2 weeks. Now he has missed 3. In theory, he would be back too. But if you put all 4 of those guys in, particularly Bertrand and Brown, that makes a difference. Like, would that have taken a touchdown off the board against Central Michigan if Notre Dame's defense was full speed? I think that's a reasonable position to take.
Yeah, I'm sure Central Michigan fans listening to this, all of you, both of you, are saying, if we had Burr Emanuel Jr. today. No. Let's turn the page. I've been waiting for this week forever, as I'm sure everyone else has. What are you most excited about? What do you got cooking on The Athletic ahead of this game?
So I have a big story sort of on the strategies behind Notre Dame's ticketing effort here to keep the red out. That will probably be the headline. I've done a bunch of reporting on it, including talking to a Georgia fan who bought tickets to the last game in 2017 about how he bought the tickets. And that I think it will make some people's blood boil when they read it, but that's going to be a fun one. I've got a feature.
That's a tease.
Yeah. Ben Morrison that I want to get out there. And then my colleague at The Athletic, Cameron Teague, covers Ohio State. We're going to do a roundtable where we looked at, obviously we're going to preview the game, but also how the rosters were built, like where Notre Dame, according to at least the 24/7 Sports composite ranking, has the talent edges for each team. And I was surprised, very surprised, where Notre Dame had some talent edges and where Ohio State did. I think we all know Ohio State is loaded at wide receiver, obviously. But if you look at 24/7's composite rankings, Notre Dame has the better offensive line, which I think we would have thought. They also have the better running back room, which was a little bit surprising to me. So that will be a fun one to do with Cameron. You and I will be podcasting quite a bit next week, hopefully in person on Thursday, if everything goes according to plan for my travel.
And in person Saturday, maybe even live if we figure that out.
Yeah, we're hoping to do basically the show you're listening to now, but with a link that you can go and watch as we record.
And submit questions.
As we're recording.
I'm sure they'll all be calm and not too high or too low.
Yeah, that's where our producer will come into play with reading
midnight after the biggest game in years.
Yeah, midnight. That would be great if we were recording at midnight. It's just gonna be an awesome week. I've been looking forward to this one for a long, long time because it's like we were both in Columbus last year, right? Yeah, we went out to dinner the night before, if I remember correctly, which I may not remember a lot.
That's correct.
But like that game, and I wrote this in my follow-up for today, like Notre Dame had a shot, but not really a chance in that game. And
but
this one they do. Like it's not just like, oh, you need to create a special teams momentum changing play, or oh, you need to win the turnover battle. Like, you just need to play really well and you'll win, or give yourself a chance to win. Whereas last year, I felt like they went into that game needing some really funky stuff to happen to have a chance to actually win the game. None of that funky stuff happened, even though they were winning in the third quarter. It just never really felt like a game Notre Dame was going to come out with. Whereas if they're winning in the third quarter next Saturday night, I would put money on them winning the game.
I mean, let's not forget, last year they were 17.5-point underdogs. Like, a line so big that Marcus Freeman referenced it.
I did forget that
in the opening press conference. Last year, and timing is part of it. It was opening week, and opening week's always interesting because there's no NFL, and there's a lot more people kind of outside of college football who are invested and interested. Like, I've been fortunate enough to cover a handful of championship games and other big games. That was probably as close to starstruck as I've been on a field pregame, where like LeBron James and Bronny are there. Justin Fields is there. Joe Burrow's there. Jason Tatum's there. Everywhere you look,
maybe.
Probably. Well, and then, they honored, I think, the Tressel 02 title team. So pretty much anyone who ever wore an Ohio State uniform this millennium was there. It was something. Like, I remember like seeing LeBron James in an Ohio State hockey jersey and the crowd chanting Bronny's name because he was on point. And I'm thinking, like, Tyler Buckner, here's your first career start. You got the greatest living athlete.
Good luck.
Greatest living active athlete on the other sideline rooting against you. Like, good luck. Not an enviable position to be in. Like, it won't be like that, but there will be game day. There will certainly be some star power. Curious to see, what kind of A-listers come out for this one. But to your point, I mean, we were texting about this earlier. I think DraftKings, as late as maybe yesterday, had a line for it. It was 2.5 Ohio State, which a toss-up, right? If it's that low. Yeah. There's a lot we don't know about both teams against this level of competition through this early part of the season. It feels almost like, obviously, Notre Dame's not in a conference, and we all have our opinions about the competitive nature of the ACC, if you will, but it feels almost like the beginning of the conference season for Notre Dame, like the beginning of an up in competition. Because
the 4-game stretch that's coming, Ohio State,
it's tough.
Duke,
just on it,
at Duke, at Louisville, USC,
I think, or USC.
Then they're not. Then they have a week off. Like, that's the 8 games in 8 weeks. Is they played their 4 warm-ups. Now they've got 4 like real deals coming in, and like the way Notre Dame has played so far, I think coming out of that, anything less than 7-1 would be pretty disappointing.
Yes, barring any crazy injuries or attrition or anything like that, I would agree. Like, competitive wise, yes, if they lost 2, it'd be disappointing just based on how good the quarterbacks played so far and how good they've looked as an operation so far. I'm very, very excited about this one. I had this quote in my head when you were talking about keeping the red out. There was a viral clip last week ahead of Nebraska, Colorado, of one-time Notre Dame offense coordinator candidate Sean Lewis saying to his team, "I'd rather be dead than see red in this building this week." And I think that's a quote that can apply to Notre Dame fans going into this next weekend against Ohio State. They certainly want to keep the red out. And obviously it's a big fan base. Red is a color that comes through very easily in the crowd and on TV. I do wonder, though, it's a Big Ten team that's drivable distance. It's not Georgia, which is a once in a lifetime trip that also happens to be packaged around the same weekend as a Falcons-Bears game in Chicago. That also happens to come on the heels of a 4-8 Notre Dame season, which a lot of fans didn't want Brian Kelly back, and I don't really blame them after they go 4-8. So, if they could make back their season tickets on one game, Mendoza Business School is number 1 in the country for a reason. These guys know what they're doing. I don't blame them. This is different, though.
Yes.
So, there'll be some red there, and it'll stand out, and it's a vocal bunch. But it's not going to be Georgia. And you've been reporting on this. You know better than I would, but it's not going to be Georgia. I would be surprised if it was worse than Cincinnati a couple years ago. I think that would be as bad as it could get, but I don't think it'll be that
Cincinnati
bad.
Would be bad to me. I think for Notre Dame Stadium, like, Clemson in 2020 last year would be where you want to be with this.
I don't remember anything from that. Like as far as Clemson's
Texas
presence.
in 2015. Like there was some. It was more than like your typical road team would have, but not a lot more. Notre Dame needs to have a home field advantage for Notre Dame. And, I've talked to Jack Swarbrick about this, talked to ticketing people about this. Like, there's only so much they can do. They need Notre Dame fans not to sell their tickets to the game. And that, I think Notre Dame is given, unlike Georgia in 17, but even the Cincinnati game, like Notre Dame was undefeated that year.
Right. And those are only loss. I mean, it's crazy to think about because you don't think of that as this great season.
No.
It was a pretty damn good season.
Right. It just, you need Notre Dame fans to like not take the money and show up and cheer their ass off. Like like Notre Dame should, like they've put, the football program itself has put everything out there to set the stage for the fan base to do it. Now the fan base just has to do it. So that
you mean the show me the money video for this?
Show me the money video.
Great.
Like, yeah.
Not
if you really love Audric Estime and you love Sam Hartman and you're screaming that at your desk, like show up to the game on Saturday night. Don't sell your tickets. But I do think that, like, I don't remember talking to Notre Dame fans in 2017 and hearing like, "Ooh, I can't wait for the Georgia game." I don't remember talking to Notre Dame fans in 2021 and anyone saying Cincinnati can't wait. This one, you can't walk anywhere in South Bend. Like the Methodist Church down the road has "Go Irish" on its like light up placard now. Like Notre Dame we're entering into like the phase where Notre Dame and South Bend feels like the Indiana old school high school basketball team that's gone on a march to the state championship, where like everyone's in on it and people will greet you on the street by saying "Go Irish." And then other people say "Go Irish" back to them. Like we're kind of at that point now where there's enthusiasm for the team in a way there hasn't been in a while. Like that's never really happened last year in Marcus's first year because they got off to such a rough start. I don't know the last time people had any kind of affinity for a Brian Kelly era team, like 2012, maybe. 12. I don't know. So, okay, that's 11 years ago.
Right.
So more than a decade, the fan base has been waiting for a team that they can sort of get behind, that puts a good product on the field and plays an opponent that they actually hate. And in lieu of Michigan, Ohio State, I think, will do in that role.
Unquestionably. I also go out on a limb and say there will be a lengthy field presentation for Jack Swarbrick and Gene Smith, since they're probably the two most powerful athletic directors in the country, and they're both retiring. I think there will be something, especially Gene Smith being a Notre Dame guy. I was trying to see if there were any like photos of him in a green jersey playing for Notre Dame, since he played during that kind of like green jersey era, but nothing I could find in the archives. And then, if I can plug myself here on the Inside Zone, like I'm going to be talking to coaches early this week who've played both teams just to give an old school X's and O's breakdown. I know me and you did a few of those with Clemson, some other big games. We were both at the Athletic together, and they are fun. And I think they'll be more fun than previous years because I have legitimate questions about both teams in a way. Before it's like how the framing of the question is, what's Notre Dame have to do to win if you're talking to a coach who's faced both or the other. And now it's okay, like what's actually going to happen here? And I think we'll I saw a few of those going around for Alabama, Texas last week, and they ended up proving to be pretty prescient because Texas did what seemed to be unthinkable and beat Alabama pretty handily. And I this is as pumped as I've been for a game in quite some time because there's everything is on the table for this one, both good and bad. And again, it's so early in the season that even if it is bad, like there are ample opportunities to rebound from this one and not have it just completely crater your season.
Yeah, no doubt. Everything is there. It's like let's just say if Notre Dame loses this one, USC is right around the corner. And you have a chance to sort of get almost all of that back. But if you win this one,
Duke's right around the corner.
Yeah, Duke is right around the corner, but I think Notre Dame would be like right there with Colorado as like, what's the story in college football that you care about or you're interested in? Notre Dame just having knocked off Ohio State with Sam Hartman, like that would be up there.
I need to look really quickly since you said that. So Colorado plays the week after next week. They play Oregon. They play USC at home. If somehow Colorado gets by Oregon, Caleb Williams and Dion, both undefeated, is just going to set the world on fire. I'm trying to think, does USC have anyone between now and then that they – no, they don't. It's bye this week at Arizona State, at Colorado.
Yeah, Colorado is
Arizona.
Like a game that we didn't expect to be a game. So, yeah, they in theory should be undefeated when they roll in here. I mean, that would be like a 7-0 USC versus 7-0, or maybe I think it would be 6-0 USC versus 7-0 Notre Dame. Like, I'd watch that one too. Like, that'd be fun.
Think if both teams are undefeated, do you think that game could be bigger than this one against Ohio State?
No, I don't think
really?
So. Because just like Notre Dame has not beaten Ohio State since the 30s. I think that changes the dynamic. I guess it would probably be bigger on like a national stage.
If they're both undefeated. I mean, we're talking about probably the two best players in the country taking the field that night.
Yeah, that'd be an interesting discussion. You know what, Matt? I would welcome that conversation.
I think NBC would welcome that conversation.
Yeah. You know who else would welcome that conversation? Our listeners. Because they'd be having a hell of a good time with this season. So, yeah, that would be – we might have to do another live show in Chicago at that point if Notre Dame was 7-0 going into USC and USC was also undefeated. Like Sam Hartman, Caleb Williams, Heisman off.
Who can give out the most Beats headphones to their teammates? Caleb had one video this week. His were pretty. I will say the ones he gave out had like the Trojan Coliseum design on them. They were custom. They're pretty cool.
Yeah. It's the Sam Hartman ones are gold. Like, gold headphones are good. But Caleb Williams has a slightly higher Q rating than Sam Hartman since he's thrown out all these first pitches at baseball games and whatnot. And
he has a Heisman trophy too. That helps.
Yeah, if you could get that one. Because that would be one. It's the rivalry is different than it is with Ohio State. There's animosity, but I think Ohio State in some ways is more hated than USC among the Notre Dame fan base. But that would be a Heisman Trophy launching pad for Sam Hartman on an individual level, which that we can get real ahead of ourselves at that point. But if that happened, the conversation around Sam Hartman, I think, would shift quite a bit. So again, our listeners would really welcome us to be talking about that in mid-October, because that means something went incredibly next weekend.
It's a definite possibility. Like, I don't think it's outrageous to throw that out there as a possibility.
No, I don't think so either.
We've talked a lot. We still have a lot to talk about. It's getting late. Let's put a bow on this one. Anything you want to add from Central Michigan ahead of next week against Ohio State?
No, I think it was just they came out of it okay. I thought that it was evidence that they need to be at full strength to beat Ohio State, which, I mean, is Bertrand and Brown. But in the same way that Hartman has shown, I think, everyone over the previous 3 weeks, like, you always have a great chance when your quarterback is that good. And eventually Sam Hartman's going to throw a pick. Might be next weekend, but he's got a chance to throw 3 or 4 touchdown passes too. And Notre Dame hasn't had a quarterback who can deliver in a big spot. Like, Notre Dame winning because of quarterback play, not in spite of quarterback play, or not because the quarterback play was just like neither, it was kind of a net neutral. Like, that's Notre Dame's living in a different world with the quarterback play right now. And I think the fans are eating that up. I think that's why this version of this team has sort of engendered so much goodwill among the fan base so far. It's like they're a really good product. So I'm excited to see them turn it up a level against Ohio State on next Saturday night.
40 points in every game, very easy on the eyes, an A-list quarterback. I'm pumped. You're pumped. We'll get you out of there in this. I'm Matt. That's Pete. Again, thank you for listening to The Independent. This has been the post-game show of Central Michigan, 41-17. The final, the Irish winners to improve to 4-0. Please like, subscribe, and download us on Apple, Spotify, Google, or wherever you get your favorite podcasts. We have a YouTube channel as well that you can subscribe to and tune in for all the hot takes on your undefeated top 10 ranked Fighting Irish ahead of next week's game against Ohio State. That's all for Pete and Matt. We will see you twice midweek.